Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another exciting night of NBA basketball. He dribbles through traffic, gets to the basket, and throws it down.
Out of bounds, Detroit basketball.
What is going on, Pistons fans? Welcome back to another edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast, brought to you by Believe and the FanDuel Sportsbook. We have a jam-packed episode of the podcast today. We're going to do a mid-season report card on the Detroit Pistons from top to bottom, from the executives and coaching to the players on the team. We'll talk about an interesting, maybe not so interesting, trade rumor that has begun floating out there just minutes before we hit the record button today. We'll also talk about the Pistons, who just continue to win, even with out Cade Cunningham in the fold, with some other guys getting back. They just continue to find ways to win at 32-10, first in the Eastern Conference. And I'm going to do that myself, Aaron Johnson, with Jasper Apollonia today. Jasper, how we doing?
Doing great, Aaron. It's nice to be on the podcast talking with you about four very real victories after we dove into the Pistons' moral victory against the Clippers the last time we recorded. So it's just nice to be back. It's nice to see the Pistons continuing to win basketball games and now put some real distance between themselves and the rest of the pack in the Eastern Conference. We talked about last week the Pistons line getting set at, 56.5 wins. We both kind of tentatively took the over. Well, now, look, they're on pace for like 63, 64 wins at this point. It looks like, barring anything crazy, they're going to breeze right past that. So, yeah, nice to be back with you, Aaron, and really, really excited to talk about what has been a just spectacular first half of the season for the Detroit Pistons.
We can talk about this recent stretch of wins for the Detroit Pistons, and it kind of incorporates with the line from our friends over at the FanDuel Sportsbook that I wanted to bring to the table this week, and that is the NBA Coach of the Year race. JB Bickerstaff has moved into a heavy favorite at -115 to win the award per FanDuel Sportsbook. Mitch Johnson, the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, is behind him. He's at the second best odds at +430. And I go back and I look at the stretch of wins for Detroit, namely the win against the Boston Celtics, I think was incredibly impressive. Boston has been playing very high-level basketball after starting the season a bit slow. Even without Jason Tatum, they have been a fantastic group. They have jumped up to being right below the Pistons in the top of the conference. And I thought that win was spectacular for Detroit, and I think it helps continue to build JB Bickerstaff's case for the Coach of the Year award, an award that I thought he should have absolutely won last year, considering the turnaround that the Pistons underwent with him taking over as the team's head coach, replacing Monty Williams. But now this year, he is the heavy favorite right now, and I think deservedly so, with where the Pistons stand, continuing to stay atop the East, continuing to, improve their record year over year. It looks like they are well on their way to doing that this year. You mentioned what they're on track to win this season. Even if they don't get to that, I think that JB Bickerstaff has done a phenomenal job and deserves to be the heavy favorite right now for the NBA's Coach of the Year award.
Yeah, absolutely. We both thought last year this should have been JB Bickerstaff's award to win. And this year, it does really seem like he's going to get it, not just based on how good the Pistons have been this year, because that's a pretty solid argument in and of itself. Let's not forget the guy he lost to, Kenny Atkinson. The reason he won that award was because the Cleveland Cavaliers won 60 games. So, now the Pistons are in that kind of position. We know the NBA, they like to give the guys who win the most amount of games these kind of awards. Otherwise, I would actually say the guy that was on the opposite end of the sideline from JB Bickerstaff in Joe Mazzulla would be another guy that I think in most years would have an unbelievable case to have coach of the year. I know the Pistons have put some distance between themselves and the Celtics, where they're now at 5.5 games. But what Joe Mazzulla has done for the Celtics this year is really incredible. And I mean, what makes, like, for me, a great coach is how they play into the strengths of their team and they hide the weaknesses. We've talked about, and we're going to continue to talk about, how unbelievable the Detroit Pistons defense is, second in the league. It is really clear there are like a couple tiers to this defensive thing in the NBA right now. Oklahoma City has pretty much solidified themselves at the top. Detroit has solidified themselves as number 2. And then you look at the gap between them and number 3. It's as big as the gap between 3 and 17. So, like, this is a truly elite defense for the Detroit Pistons. They've been better than the Oklahoma City Thunder over, like, the last 2 months almost now. But what Joe Mazzulla has done is kind of the opposite thing for the Boston Celtics. He's played into their offensive strengths. They're shooting so many threes while hiding their defensive deficiencies. I mean, you saw it with that front court in the game against the Pistons. It's been pretty much the deciding factor in every single game in their season series so far has been, has Boston been able to compete on the boards? They actually won the rebounding battle in that game, but they got killed in the paint. Which is really to say, what JB has done is really said, hey, I have an offensively limited roster here. I need to make this an elite defense, and has done so. Joe Mazzulla has done the opposite for the Boston Celtics. He has the number 2 offense in the entire NBA with them while having a very limited defense. So, yeah, I think JB Bickerstaff, this is his year. He's going to win it. He should have won it last year, and I think voters are going to keep that in mind as well. Like, I think that's one of the things he really has going for him there. Obviously, like, the Spurs have also exceeded expectations. I just think when you look at the last 2 years, the job this guy has done, and we'll get to it in our report card, but it's pretty dang good.
No, you're spot on, and I think Joe Mazzulla does deserve his flowers. I mean, this is a Boston Celtic team that's is on pace to win 50 games. They're doing it without their best player in Jason Tatum. They're doing it with a center rotation of Neemias Queta and Luka Garza. Like,
Luka like hit big shots for them. Like,
he's turned in Boston to a legitimate NBA player. But, like, that is their center rotation. These guys that, for years have been end of bench, third string type of players, and that's their 1 and 2 at the center spot right now. Again, no Jason Tatum. I think what he's done there is remarkable, and to do so after starting as slow as they did, it would be easy to say, okay, it's clear early on that we're not going to be a very good team this year. Let's take this gap year with Tatum out. We'll put ourselves in a better position to restructure moving forward. And they did the complete opposite. They buckled down. He was able to get the team to buckle down, and now they're at where they're at. So I thought, spot on to give Mazzulla some credit there as well. Okay, before we get into this report card, this really the big segment of the podcast, report card on just the entire Detroit Pistons organization as we've officially passed the midway point of the regular season. I want to talk about something that could be something that could be absolutely nothing. This comes from Brett Siegel of Clutch Points, who, look, just being honest, this is not Shams, this is not Chris Haynes, this is not Brian Windhorst, this is not Mark Stein, this is tiers below that. But in the reporter world, he seemingly does have a significant following. And he talked about essentially reported that the Detroit Pistons are continuing to monitor the Jaden Ivey situation. They very much could move on from Jaden Ivey before the February 5th trade deadline. And then he said that the Pistons are what he would say are the number 1 team in line to go after Herb Jones, a forward from the New Orleans Pelicans. Jones is 27 years old. He's a 6'7" forward. He's shooting 39% from the field, 33% from the three-point line this season. Definitely known as a defensive stopper. That is where he makes his money. He is a very, very high-level defender on the wing. But Jasper, I'm curious, does acquiring a player that fits that billing make sense for this current iteration of the Detroit Pistons?
I mean, look, from a talent for talent standpoint at this point, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with me on this, but acquiring Herb Jones for Jaden Ivey would be, from a talent perspective only, on paper, be a win for the Detroit Pistons. Look, this is a guy who made an all-defensive first team just 2 years ago, and I know his numbers are not very good this year. But the reality is the situation in New Orleans is untenable, and nobody's going to look good in a situation like that. You know, I was listening to Tayshaun Prince on the Knuckleheads podcast, and he was talking about how he only made the defensive teams after the Pistons won the title, even though the year they won the title was probably the best defensive year of his career. That's just kind of how it works with defense. You only really get those accolades when your team is playing well, because it's such a team-oriented skill set, and one that the New Orleans Pelicans, I know their defense has been better as of late with James Borrego as the head coach, but it's not something that they're really, put together to accentuate. I think from that perspective, it'd be a win, and one normally I don't think the Pistons would be able to pull off with where Jaden Ivey's trade value's at. That being said, we know Troy Weaver likes his Troy Weaver guys, and even though Joe Dumars is the GM, I know Troy Weaver is a big voice there, and we know that he will go out of his way to get his guys back on his team. Just ask James Wiseman, just ask Sadiq Bey. So I think for me, from that perspective, yeah, it'd be a win. That being said, from a fit perspective, where the Pistons are at, what their strengths are, I know that you want to lean into your defense, but there are ways where you can continue to hone that identity and bring in somebody that offensively fits in with what you're missing right now. And I don't think Herb Jones really does that for Detroit. Career 36% shooter from three, but it hasn't been consistent. He's been super up and down with his shot over his career. I don't really trust it. He's not somebody that you anticipate being able to create off the dribble. He is not a creator for others. And those are the three things that the Pistons need right now. They need a consistent shooter. They need somebody who can create for others. And they need somebody who is going to be able to dribble the basketball. So for me, I would say, whether this is true or not, and even if I believe that the talent for talent would be worth it, I don't think it works for this Pistons team, given their depth and their needs right now.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is, right, is this legitimate? We don't know. But in the world that it is legitimate, I just don't know why this would make sense or how this would make sense for Detroit. You have Asar Thompson, you have Ron Holland. Those are both two defensive-minded forwards that play in or have very similar offensive limitations to Herb Jones. There's no denying that Herb Jones is a very, very high-level defender. And on the majority of teams, like, if you can get a guy like him, you're absolutely going to try to do it. But this is a Detroit Pistons team where their best defenders are already on the wing. They're not necessarily looking for that. And then they have to try to slot in another guy that cannot shoot the basketball in an offense that is already the worst shooting team in the league. I just don't get that. This is already an elite defensive team. I understand wanting to play to your strengths, but I think that they would just be continuing to limit themselves offensively, make it harder for themselves offensively, that I just don't know if this is the right move. On top of this, in the reporting, it was mentioned that this could be a Jaden Ivey and 1 or 2 picks type of move to get Herb Jones. And so if you're talking about taking some considerable assets and pushing them in for something, I just don't think for the Detroit Pistons, this is the guy that you do that for. So I know it's exciting. I know it's cool that the Pistons are in, looking at making moves and all that, but you have to think about the fit. And as great as he would be to add to the defense of the Detroit Pistons, he would fit the identity, he would fit the culture. He would continue to play into all the wrong things about Detroit's offensive spacing issues right now. And so for that reason, I'm out on a move like this. I'm in if they want to push some chips in, they want to take a player or two and a pick or two and do something, that's fine. But I don't think it should be for Herbert Jones.
And I'll say this too, Aaron, like there's another couple reasons. One, you have Javonte Green as well. And like, let's not act like Javonte Green has not been one of the best perimeter defenders per minute in the NBA this year, averaging like 1.4 steals per game on like 20 minutes. I mean, the guy is just absolutely hellacious. He and Ron Holland, you look at those steals number like per minute, there's a reason the Pistons defense is so good and why their transition offense is such a boon for them, even when they're not one of like on the, per possession best transition teams. With those guys there, they're just able to beat you over the head with it, game in, game out. And so it's not like they lack depth there either. And the other thing too is you could say like, well, yeah, okay, it just gives you more opportunities to play guys like, those mix and match, defensive lineups. But the Detroit Pistons this year, when Asar Thompson and Ron Holland are on the floor together, they have a defensive rating of 89 points per 100 possessions. Absolutely elite. They're on, I think they have a net rating of like plus 12 in those minutes. But they've only played like 180 minutes together because the offensive limitations are so apparent still. The net rating's really good, but it's only at 12 because the offensive rating's at 101 points per 100 possessions, and that just isn't going to cut it. I don't see Herb Jones changing that meaningfully. So yeah, for me, I just don't see really where the need is and where the fit is based on what the Detroit staff has already shown you. If you're going to be giving up picks, I'm fine with that. If you're going to be giving up a player or two, I'm fine with that. But it needs to be for something that's going to meaningfully improve your areas of weakness at this point, because the parts that you're so strong in, I don't anticipate those becoming weaknesses at any point in the rest of the season. Like, you're not going to go into the playoffs and lose a series and be like, you know why we lost that? Too many good perimeter wing defenders. Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, one final point on the Herb Jones stuff. He's making just under $14 million this year. He'll make it just under 15 next year. But after that, it jumps to $21 million a year, $22.5 million a year. And then he has a player option in the 29-30 season for over $24 million a year. So considerable jump in the contract as time goes on with it as well. But yeah, overall, just not the guy that the Pistons should be pushing their chips in for if they're going to do something on what I would say is a medium to bigger scale this season. I just wouldn't do that for him. Okay, let's move on to the main topic of today's show, where we kind of grade the Pistons now that we're past the midway point, 32-10, first in the Eastern Conference. Let's grade this performance so far through this first part of the season, and let's start at the top. Trajan Langdon. You look at what he did in the offseason. He drafted Chaz Lanier. He signed Duncan Robinson. He signed Karis LeVert. Obviously, let Dennis Schroeder go. They did not do anything with Malik Beasley. All of the stuff on Malik Beasley seems essentially dead for now. But the big moves of the offseason for the Pistons were the acquisitions of Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert. Jasper, what would you give? Oh, and Javonte Green, pardon me. But what would you grade Trajan Langdon's performance as we are at the midway point of the season?
This grade is either going to age so well or so badly based on whatever happens at the trade deadline. That's just the reality of NBA GMing. But I would have to give Trajan Langdon an A- here. And the reason is it's not an A because he wasn't able to necessarily build upon the weaknesses of the Detroit Pistons roster going into this year, we knew there was an issue with shooting, even with Malik Beasley. That wasn't necessarily rectified. It just, didn't get I'd say that much worse, but like they're the worst shooting team in the NBA. So I guess it did. But he made the moves he needed to make in regards to bringing in Duncan Robinson to at least replace some of that shooting and provide some other things as well. You hit on it. Javonte Green, tremendous pickup. We will see what he does with the Dennis Schroeder trade exemption. That's also why that's a little bit of an incomplete there even. And I think one other thing that he did as well, he kept Danis Jenkins around the organization. And I think that is something that you have to give him there as well. So yeah, guys like Javonte Green, Danis Jenkins, this was one of our biggest things when we talked about what we had issues with Troy Weaver. He did not find value in the back end of the draft, in free agency. This is what Trajan Langdon has done this year. You can have your issues with the Karis LeVert signing and what he's done, but look, the numbers do speak for themselves. He has been an important part of this team this year with their lack of ball handling. And I think given the fact that they did anticipate re-signing Malik Beasley, and that would have helped them a lot, I think Trajan Langdon's pretty much done the best he can with the tools he's been given. It's just a little bit of an incomplete grade for right now.
Yeah, I am very close with you on this. I got him at a B+. A lot of it does hinge on what happens at the deadline, but I think when you look back, I have to respect how hard he had to pivot after the Malik Beasley stuff dropped on the eve of NBA free agency beginning. That's a very tough thing. It obviously threw a big wrench in the Pistons offseason's plans as they were reportedly, going to extend Beasley on a 3-year deal. But my reasoning for this not being an A is because the Pistons have a clear deficiency that it should or needs to be addressed at the deadline, or if it isn't, I think it sets up Detroit to run into some potentially very real struggles in the playoffs when it comes to operating in the half court on offense. No doubt with the defense that they have, they can hold teams to fewer points, they can force turnovers, they can get out in transition, and they can score some buckets there. But in the half court, this team is not very good this year. I believe the last rating I saw was there 19th in half court offense at this point in the season. For a team that's first in their conference, has 32 wins through 42 games, that is a alarming number. And I think when you get into the postseason and teams take care of the ball more and pace slows down and you're playing in the half court more, obviously that's going to be a problem for Detroit. And can they do something at the deadline to improve that? You hope, but they didn't necessarily do it in the offseason prior. And so Duncan Robinson's been great for the Pistons. The Karis LeVert contract, as much as I don't love it, it's also a very easy contract to move in a deal right now if the Pistons do make a move at the deadline or make a move in the offseason. So he certainly didn't do anything to hurt the team. They've won 32 games. But there was definitely an opportunity for Detroit to do a little bit more in the offseason. And because they didn't, now we're sitting on in the edge of our seats, wondering if they'll do it at the deadline here in a few weeks. Okay, JB Bickerstaff. For me, I don't really think this is super debatable or super tough. It's an A+. They're 32-10. They're the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. A lot of times you see a team have a great season and then they get a little complacent or they take a step back or just aren't the same. And it's been the complete opposite for the Detroit Pistons. The culture that he has established, his ability to get guys to come in on a random night's notice and give them great minutes, give them good minutes, give them some minutes, and then not play for the next 3 games and come out the game after and perform well. That is, as much as the players deserve credit for that, the coaching staff has a big part in that as well. And I think JB Bickerstaff and his staff have been absolutely phenomenal this year. A+ for sure for me with JB.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where it's like you can nitpick small things with JB. Do I love that he has, continued to throw out the Karis LeVert and Jaden Ivey 2-man game? No, not really. Has there been times where I'm like, I'm not really sure I like this lineup? Yeah, but come on. This is an A+. Like, let's be so for real. 32 and 10.
If you were going to dock it to an A, it could only be because the Pistons are probably the worst team at using their challenges in the game. But that's not necessarily on JB. That's on the staff sitting behind the bench with the iPad.
I think it's on JB because JB gets pissed off after like 3 calls that go against him. And he's like trying to make a point, and it's the first quarter. And you're like, JB, come on, man. Luckily, that hasn't come back to bite them too bad, especially considering that they do lead the league in wins within 10 points. So luckily, even with all the close games, it hasn't really hurt them. But yeah, Aaron, it's nitpicky. I'm sorry, it's small stuff. And, somebody who is no coach is going to be 100% when it comes to the X's and O's. It doesn't happen. And even if you as a fan, even sometimes they know they're not throwing out a perfect lineup. But it's a long season, and they're experimenting. They're trying different things. You don't know everything going on behind the scenes. For me, when you look at the behind the scenes stuff, this is, and everybody can tell, this team is so connected on, off the court. The culture is so for real. It is one of the strongest cultures in the NBA, and that is coming off of 2 years ago winning 14 games. You went from being a team that is associated with losing to one that is now a winner. And JP Bickerstaff is the head of the snake there, along with Cade Cunningham, and you can't downplay their relationship as well. The way those two guys are in sync together, the front office, ownership. Yeah, JP Bickerstaff, A+, man. Coach of the year.
All right, Jasper, let's move on to the obvious head of the snake on the court, Cade Cunningham. 26 points a game, 10 assists. He is one of the favorites to win the MVP award. He's one of the favorites to win the Clutch Player of the Year award. He's been one of the best defenders per several key metrics so far this season as well. I don't want to say A+ because he's having a down year shooting. The turnovers can still be nip you in the bud here or there. But I think a solid A for Cade Cunningham. I mean, again, this is a guy that's in the top 3 of the MVP race. How bad of a season could you possibly be having if you're in that type of a discussion? So I think an A here is very well earned. If he were shooting a little bit better from the 3-point line, you think about some of his recent games and the shooting performances in those games, and you're like, man, you could use him not shooting 3 of 14 from the field or whatever it was. But even when he does have those games, the way that he still finds ways, still has the ability to impact, whether it's the double-digit assists or playing that high-level defense, like it just reminds you, like, that's how elite of a player he is. So for me, Cade Cunningham gets a very solid A.
Boy, I hope we're not going to be in total agreement on everything here. Yeah, Cade Cunningham is an A for me as well. And you pretty much hit on most of the things I was going to say there. Yeah, the shooting could be better. I'll make some excuses for him in regards to the last few games. He has been dealing with that bruise, that contusion, if you will. If you want to use the medical term, it's a bruise. His hand's hurting him. But overall, yeah, the shooting could have been a little better this year. The turnovers could be a little bit better. Come on, though. It's an A. And, you talk about that game against the Celtics where he did shoot 4 of 17 from the floor for 16 points. You go, that's not really great. But then you look, and he had 14 assists. That's more than the entire Celtics team combined. His ability to impact the game night in, night out, not just on the offensive, but also the defensive side of the ball. The only reason it's not an A+, Aaron, is because the expectations for Cade have changed. If this was last year and he was doing this, it'd be an A+. This year, it's an A, and it's only because we look at this guy and we say, you are a top 5, top 10 player. And so the standard you're going to be held to is different than everybody else on the roster, and that's a good thing.
Okay, let's move on to Duncan Robinson. 12 points per game, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, shooting 40.7% from the 3-point line on just over 7 attempts per game. Jasper, you can start here. What does Duncan Robinson get as his midseason grade with the Detroit Pistons?
I have to tell you, I'm trying not to be too crazy high on everybody, but I think Duncan Robinson, for me, he's been an A- for the Detroit Pistons this year. And that might seem a little high when you just look at the overall production, but you cannot understate just how important he's been to their spacing this year, their three-point shooting. He has been so consistent for them. And I think that's really the thing that's been so underrated about him this year. It's not that he's having these, nights where he's shooting, 5 of 7 from 3 and going off. And then the next couple nights, he's 1 of 8 from 3 and you're going, uh-oh. No, he's going out there every single night, and his good nights are excellent, obviously, but even his bad nights, he's giving you a couple threes there. He's stayed healthy. He is committed on the defensive end. I think it's one of those things. You look at his defense at the beginning of this year versus where he is defensively now. Yes, he is still the weakest spot in that starting lineup, but hey, he's held his own on plenty of occasions, and he understands how to play with the back line. It's been really impressive for me. He's been able to handle the ball a little bit, kind of like Malik Beasley was last year, and get into the lane and draw fouls, get to the rim, pass a little bit. Yeah, I have to give it an A-, Duncan Robinson this year. I think he's been tremendous.
I'm going to be the teacher that everybody likes right now because I'm just going to keep handing out A's. I think Duncan Robinson, and I'm glad you brought this up because I think this is like the differentiator for me. But if you're watching the Pistons on a nightly basis right now, Duncan Robinson is getting picked on much less. Or when teams try to pick on him, it is not working out quite nearly as often as it was in the first part of the season. It's weird to say that at 31 years old, he's maybe like getting better on defense, but maybe he's just getting better at like where to pick his spots, where to, take his chance to go for a steal or whatever. Like he's holding his own. He's moving his feet better. He's staying in front of guys more, which was a big problem in the beginning of the season. Guys were just blowing by him, and that has been much, much better as of late. So when I look at that and I look at the like absolutely massive role that he plays for the Detroit Pistons on offense, just because of the sole shooting gravity that he has, it's hard for me to look at anything but, an A, and I will be generous and I'll give him an A instead of an A- just because he has, I see how important he is to the Detroit Pistons, and man, I couldn't imagine them playing a long stretch of games without him right now because he has just been such a steady hand. Again, as you mentioned it, the shooting has been so consistent, and that was something that wasn't there at the beginning of the season either. He was kind of like one night was on, one night was off. Lately, he's just been a consistent on, and when you're doing that for a long stretch of games, super valuable stuff. Okay, Jasper.
One quick thing too. I have to say that I really appreciate about him is that he's also bought into the mentality, and like he mean mugs, and every time Duncan Robinson does something good defensively or offensively, it just starts like talking crazy smack. I love it. I cannot get enough of it because I know I would be that dude if I was in the NBA as well.
Very, very true. He's definitely taking after the youngins on the team.
Yeah, he's in that dog pound.
Let's move on to what I think could be the first one that's a little bit more divisive. Ausar Thompson. Jasper, I'll let you start here, but Thompson, 38 games played this year, 11 points, 6 rebounds, 2.5 assists, just under 2 steals, and just under a block per game. What are you giving him on your midseason report card?
I have to give Ausar Thompson a B year. And this is, oh no, we're in total agreement again. I'm sorry, man. I have to give him a B. And the only reason it's a B, though, I'll say this. Maybe I'll be a little bit more negative on him than you, or maybe we're going to be in total lockstep here. It's a B for me because it's kind of what I expected to see from Ausar this year, if I'm being completely honest with you. I think the versatility of his offensive game has taken a little bit of a step forward, and with it, the efficiency of his offensive game has dwindled a little bit. Look, he's not shooting well from the free throw line, and that has definitely affected him. You're seeing a little less willingness to go as hard to the rack as maybe he would were he shooting a little better from the free throw line. But look, we saw it in the Pelicans game last night. When he's given the opportunity, and I know people have been like, what's happening to the ball handling reps? The Pistons are a Cade Cunningham-centric offense. When he's out of the lineup, you see what the other guys can do. And I think we're going to talk about this with Jalen Duren in a little bit as well. With Asar, when Cade's not on the floor and he's asked to do more, you are seeing the growth in his passing. You are seeing the growth in his ball handling, in his slashing. It is there. He's just not being asked to do it because that's not what's best for the offense as of right now. It's not the best utilization of the pieces they have. So, yeah, that's been a little under what I wanted it to be, but the defense is, what can we say? I mean, he is one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire NBA. He has a real argument to be the number one best perimeter defender in the league. So for me, it has to be a B. He's just in line with what I expect. His defense is spectacular. His offense is kind of what I thought it would be. It's a B. He's met expectations.
I'm going to give Asar Thompson a B minus. I think the biggest holdup for me is just there is really no improvement to his shooting game. There's not even it being can he hit corner threes or can he hit threes in general, but there's not much in the mid range.
He's been shooting that turnaround jumper. He's been shooting that turnaround jumper way more this year. You do have to admit that.
Yeah, I just was hoping for more. I was hoping for a bigger leap this year. The fact that he's not even really looking to shoot a jumper outside of that, in the paint turnaround jumper, like to me, that is a bit disappointing. And I just don't know how viable that is going to be long-term for him. Like there has to be some sort of growth, and it's not happened this year, and it just doesn't look like it's going to happen right now because he's not looking to that. And that's fine. Like there is certainly a point to like playing to your strengths and not trying to force yourself in the middle of a season to turn into something that you just aren't at that moment in time. And I totally get that. And we know that Asar Thompson is a phenomenal defender. He is a really good rebounder for his position. The way that he plays is great for the Pistons on that side of the court. But I think long term, for the betterment of the Pistons, for the betterment of himself, there's going to have to be some serious growth on offense. So for that, I'm just below you at a B minus. I thought you might have been a little bit higher, but we were pretty close there. All right. This one I think is interesting as well. Tobias Harris, starting power forward, but he has been banged up so far this season. He's only played in 27 games. Jasper, you want me to start? You want to go first? It's up to you.
Let's do it. You go, man.
All right, I'm going to give him
King.
I'm going to give him a C. He is. I think the injuries certainly are a downside. I mean, last year he was so steady for Detroit. Played 73 games. He's shooting sub 34% from the three-point line. He's just been a bit more inconsistent this year than he was last year. That was one of the great things of Tobias Harris last year is he was just Mr. Steady Eddie. And, this year, whether it's he's another year older, he's in and out of the lineup because he's getting banged up a couple times. He's missed an extended period of games a couple times so far this year. He just hasn't had that same impact that he had last year for the Pistons. And maybe it's partly that, and maybe it's partly that the Pistons have really started to find something this year with Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart sharing the court more than they have previously. So it's not like a C is bad for Tobias Harris. You'd wish it was better, but at the same time, like he just hasn't been as good as he was last year. That's okay though.
Aaron, I'm going to give him a C plus here, and it's largely for the reasons you did. I think missing as many games as he has definitely. I mean, the best ability is availability, as they like to say. But and the overall numbers are definitely down from last year. He hasn't been as consistent. I think those are all very fair dings against him. I think the reason for me it's a C plus is because when he is on the court and he is playing well, he's the difference maker for this team. for the Pistons this year in wins where Tobias Harris is playing, he's his true shooting percentage is 58%. In losses, it's 53%. And that right there, like that ability to have a consistent scoring option next to Cade, where he is averaging 15 points in wins and only 11 in losses. I just think that 4-point difference, like that is the difference for the Pistons on a lot of nights. And so, yeah, while it hasn't been as consistent, when he's on, he's a major, major factor to them winning. And that's why I'm a little higher on him this year than you are.
All right, I want to talk about Jalen Duren now to round out the starting five. I'll go first here. If I were going to give anyone on the Detroit Pistons an A+, I think I would give it to Jalen Duren. I'm going to give him an A. Look, the Pistons can win games with Jalen Duren being their best player on the floor this year, and I think that is one of the biggest signs of the leaps that he has taken this year. He is, in my mind, an all-star. I think he has grown so much on both ends of the floor, dating back to last season when we saw him take a leap. He's built on that this year. The way that the Pistons can go to him for organic offense now is really, really encouraging to me. He's starting to hit those mid-range jumpers. They're giving him the ball and letting him go one-on-one, and he knows how to use his handle and his size to the point where it's like you can't really stop him. Like he's so skilled, and he knows how to use his great strength to get to the rim and finish. And the free throw shooting's better. I mean, I've just been so impressed with Jalen Duren. I think everybody has. I don't know if you're going to find anyone that's like, man, Jalen Duren's not really been all that.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed.
The leap from being a steady starter last year to an all-star level player this year. And so you can give him an A, you can give him an A+, you can write the smiley face, you can put the star in the top right corner of the paper. He's been spectacular this year, and he deserves all the credit he's gotten.
I think one thing that you look at it, look, when the Pistons went into the playoffs against the New York Knicks last year, you didn't feel like you could depend on Jalen Duren to match what Karl Anthony Towns was going to give the New York Knicks. I think there's a very good chance this year you're going to find Jalen Duren on the All-Star team over Karl Anthony Towns. That says pretty much everything that needs to be said right there. Yeah, it's an A. I don't think I would give an A+ to anybody, to be honest with you, unless you were absolutely perfect. It's an A. I mean,
you're one of those teachers.
Yeah, I know. I'm a jerk. No, I mean, look, an A+ is like 97% and above. Jalen Duren's a 96% guy. Like, the free throw shooting hasn't been as good for the last couple months. There have been, some stretches of play where he's taken it off a little bit offensively. He hasn't been quite as assertive, but come on, let's be real. This guy is putting up 18 and 11 a game right now. He's doing it as one of the best pick and roll men in the game. He is able to kill teams off the dribble when he's needed to. We talked about it in regards to, the last night against the Pelicans. He had a 20 and 15 game, but he was even more dominant than that. You had the Pelicans announcers. They were just oohing and eyeing every time he was doing something because, look, when he was able to get into the paint, he was able to score efficiently. And when he was pushed outside to the free throw line, he was able to burn guys off the dribble. He was able to shoot mid-range jumpers. He was able to hit fadeaways. He's able to do anything you could ask for. And while he's not a traditional spacer, his ability to score from those positions actually does help the Pistons floor spacing a lot as well. And we didn't even talk about the defense. I mean, let's be real. He is part of the dog pound now. We know how much Jalen Duren's defense was last year, even going into the playoffs, even coming into this season. I don't think we have many questions about it right now. He is, at worst, an above-average defender in the NBA right now. Incredibly impactful player on both ends.
Let's get interesting, and let's go to Jaden Ivey. I think this has certainly been the most polarizing player in the Pistons online community so far this year. You either feel one way about him or the other, and there's really not an in-between. I'll go first here. As someone that has really wanted to buy into Jaden Ivey, has really wanted to give him that chance to reestablish the footing that he had last year, I'm going to give him a C. I just wish, it's been 27 games. He's had opportunities to take on a bigger role where he's played in games without Cade Cunningham. He's played in games where, for whatever reason, there has been an opportunity for him to have a bigger role, and he hasn't seized it. And maybe part of it was the Pistons bringing him along slowly to start, which I think is totally acceptable and understandable. But I look at the game against New Orleans where Cade's out and Ivy only plays 18 minutes as, 7 points. I look at the games against Indiana. It's a blowout game, a real chance for him to get some extra opportunity or put up some nice numbers, get himself more comfortable, and he shoots 2 of 7 from the floor. But the game before that, he was great against Phoenix. 6 of 8, played a huge part in giving them the offensive burst that they needed in the second half when things really started to fall apart for Detroit. It's just not been the year that anyone has wanted for him. I think he'd probably admit the same exact thing himself after averaging 17, 4, and 4 last season on 40% three-point shooting. It's unfortunate because you'd like for him to have it at some point really gotten more comfortable and you start to see the growth this season. It just hasn't happened, unfortunately.
Jaden Ivey's played 27 games this year. He has 6 games total playing more than 20 minutes. He has 3 games total scoring more than 12 points. He has, actually, this one I didn't look up. Yeah, that's right. He does not have a single game with more than 4 assists, and he only has 3 of those as well. This is going to be a D+ for me, Aaron, and I really hate saying it. And look, maybe I'm being too harsh because he is coming off of a catastrophic leg injury. Let's be totally upfront about that. That's not his fault. But the issues that Jaden Ivey had before the leg injury, those are still there, and he doesn't have the explosiveness, the athleticism, or frankly, the confidence right now to overcome those. I'm glad you brought up the Pelicans game. I thought that was really, really not good. I thought he played very, very poorly outside of the 3-point shooting, which is the only thing he's giving you right now. The only thing Jaden Ivey is giving you right now is catch and shoot 3-point shooting. And unlike Duncan Robinson, he has not been consistent. He has good games, and he has games where he just doesn't even seem like he's on the court. But even the good games, it's not like he's giving you high volume. And again, these are like the issues that we've always talked about. Even last year when he was shooting well from 3, he wasn't giving it to you on high volume. Even when, we talked about, hey, he's not a good rim finisher. Well, he was able to get to the rim because of his athleticism. Well, but now he doesn't have the athleticism in the first step, and he still doesn't have a good handle. Like, he loses the ball when it's not a transition opportunity. He can't create anything in the half court. Can't create anything. And now it's like, really, he can't even attack mismatches. He can't attack off-balance defenses. I am still, again, being like, look, maybe this guy will come back and will look silly. But right now, his timeline is not the same as the Detroit Pistons. And I think he's been a detriment more games than he has been a help. So, yeah, for me, it's a D+, and I hate saying it.
Yeah, it feels like a change of scenery for him might just be necessary. On the complete flip side, let's move to Isaiah Stewart. I think he has been when you talk about like untouchables in the trade market, like for Detroit, really the only untouchable is Cade Cunningham when it really comes down to it. But if you're talking about guys that you like really, really, really don't want to trade unless like you have to do this thing that you must do, Isaiah Stewart's right up there for me. I mean, what he brings to this team is as an identity generator. He is the epitome of this current Detroit Pistons culture. He is the originator. He is the leader. Like, he is that guy. He has been arguably the best defender in the NBA this season, and he has become a great part of Detroit's offense. They're using him with or without Jalen Duren. He's shooting 35.5% from the three-point line. He has been absolutely spectacular this year on both sides of the court. When you look at what he does offensively and defensively, but also what he brings as a tone setter, as a cultural presence, as a leader, he gets an absolute A from me. I just don't know how you go any lower than an A. I think he's been so spectacular. He's been healthy this year. I love everything that he's given Detroit, and I just think that when I look at guys, that's like, obviously Cade's not getting traded, but if I was looking at not trading anyone else, it would be Isaiah Stewart, because he just seems like such a Detroit Piston.
I agree. It's the culture, and I mean, this will not happen, but I mean, God, I'd almost be more willing to trade Jalen Duren than I would Isaiah Stewart at this point, just because of what he brings on the defensive end of the floor. And you're 100% right, Aaron. Yeah, he's maybe, if not the best. Look, the numbers say he is the best rim protector in the NBA. Opponents shoot 42% at the rim when he's at the rim. We're not talking about mid-range jumpers. We're talking about layups and dunks, and they shoot 42% on those shots. And I'm glad you brought up the offense, Aaron, because I think that's been really the thing for him as well. We've talked about how Jalen Duren's improved defensively. Isaiah Stewart has improved a lot offensively. He's no longer a detriment to your team at that end of the floor. And there's a little bit of revisionist history, I think, there with people, or they just don't really remember. Isaiah Stewart, for the first 3 years of his career, was very, very difficult to play at times. It's why they went out and traded for Marvin Bagley. It's why they acquired James Wiseman even, because Stewart's offensive limitations made it very, very hard for them to succeed on that end and succeed defensively. His ability to improve his offense has made it so that they can play these Duren Stewart two-man lineups. It's both of those guys working in tandem. And I can't see how you could have him as anything other than an A. He is critical to what they do in every facet of the game. And he is pretty much close to untouchable for me as well.
Jasper, what about Ron Holland?
Ron Holland for me, Lil Ron, my guy. Ron Holland's got to be, I think for me, a B-. And I say this because, and again, this is one maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but I expected him to take a step forward offensively and not a regression in terms of his finishing at the rim. He's just not shooting as well at the rim this year as he was last season. Last year, Ron Holland at the rim, even inside the arc, he was a 60% shooter. This year, he's at 50%. Like, it's a pretty precipitous drop. And he's not shooting well from three. I didn't anticipate him necessarily being like a knockdown guy this year. This connects back to what you're saying about Asar Thompson. Unlike Asar, he is not afraid to let it to shoot. He had a pull-up three against the Pelicans. I was like, okay, Lil Ron, go off. And he hit it. He's one of the worst three-point shooters in the entire NBA, but I like his aggressiveness there. I love his aggressiveness at both ends of the floor. Per 36, Ron Holland is averaging 2.4 steals and 0.6 blocks. That's 3 stocks per 36. There just hasn't been enough of an improvement on the offensive end for me. I think he's been better defensively, but taking that step back in terms of his finishing at the rim, that's dinged him a little bit for me. Overall, though, he's one of the dog pound. Like, it's like Isaiah Stewart. You do have to give bonus points for team identity and chemistry there, and just what he brings. So many games when the Pistons starting lineup is struggling a little bit, they bring in Ron Holland and like Javonte Green off the bench, and their energy, that infusion, has propelled them to victories I think they might not have gotten otherwise this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think B- is probably where I'd be at with Ron Holland as well. I think he has taken a step defensively. if I go back to the start of the season, Ron Holland was getting into foul trouble, playing 5 minutes and with having 3 fouls, and was taking themselves out of games early in the year just because he couldn't stay on the floor because he just kept fouling. I think he's gotten much better at that as the season's gone on. He has gotten much better of just playing without his hands on and moving his feet and making plays. And I think the defense has certainly grown offensively. Again, as you said, it's kind of in the same boat as Azar Thompson for me. I was really hoping for a meaningful leap on that side of the court, and I just haven't seen it yet. I do feel that it can happen. I do feel that he will become a better offensive player. He will become a better shooter. He certainly can get to the line because he has that ability to drive to the basket and play through contact, and I think that that's great. But he needs to develop more as a shooter. He needs to be able to knock down shots, and I hope it happens. It's not been a great year for Ron Holland. It certainly has been bad, but he's been just around average. I think B minus is pretty fair for him.
You know, Aaron, really quickly, we do need to keep moving, but I will say one thing in regards to like Stewart, Asar, Ron Holland. One of the things that they bring with this defensive, gritty identity thing is like one of the reasons why these guys are being in foul trouble less often than they were in years past is because of that collective identity. Like refs are willing to let them play as a whole more physical because they all buy into that. And so I think that's one of those things you also have to like add into these evaluation when it comes to midseason. Like all those guys being aggressive is actually helping them overall foul less, even though they do foul at one of the highest rates in the NBA.
As we move on, I'm going to give out my first bad grade of the report card so far. I'm going to give Karis LeVert a D+. He's played in 31 games this year. And some of this is not necessarily his own fault, but I would just rather see in most of the scenarios that he's in, one of Dana Shankins or Marcus Sasser take up his minutes instead. Not a efficient shooter this year, turnover prone with the basketball. He just kind of is in the way in my mind. And every time I watch him, it just is becoming more and more apparent to me that if the Pistons do make a move, that is a guy, that is a contract that I am looking to use in said move because the Pistons have guys that are ready to step into what his role currently is. And he just has not been all that great this year. That's the pivot, one of the pivots that the Pistons had to make when Malik Beasley came off the table for them in free agency, and it just hasn't worked out in the way that Duncan Robinson has in my mind.
We're gonna get our first like disagreement here. I'm giving Karis LeVert a C. This is not because I love watching him play. It's not because I think he's been great. I think when you look at what this team has asked him to do, he's done the best he possibly can, given that. He's third on this team in assists at 2.8 per game. He's had to be a ball handler way more often than he should have to be for this squad because of injuries and so on and so forth, lack of depth. Look, he hasn't been super consistent shooting the three, but he has been one of their few spacing options for a lot of this year. He's been one of their few ball handling options for a lot of this year, and he has competed defensively. I think he's done a good job on defense for the most part. I don't think it's his fault that he's been paired with Jaden Ivey, who hasn't been like, I don't think it's a coincidence that when Jaden Ivey came back and they started sharing the floor together, Karis LeVert started looking worse. You know what I mean? Like, I know everybody wants Jaden Ivey to be good because he's the young guy and they don't really care for Karis, but like, I am not so sure that it's Karis makes Jaden Ivey worse and not the other way around. Because look, when he did get some opportunities with Cade earlier in the season, he did play okay. He played all right. So yeah, for me, I think it's a C. I think he's been as good as they could have expected given what they have asked of him. He's been overcast in his role, and unlike some other guys on the roster, he's stepped up as well as he can. That's not to say it's been great. but it's been all right. Yeah.
All right, a couple left here. Let's move to Danish Jenkins. I will give Danish Jenkins a B+. I think he's been very, very good this year. I think when his number's been called upon, he has more often than not been ready to answer the bell. In fact, I'm not giving him a B+. I'm going to give him an A-. I think this is a two-way player that, and I see your reaction, so we were maybe going to be off a little bit, but I course corrected there. I regraded the paper. I took a second look back, and I realized I'm talking about a two-way player that is so clearly going to not be a two-way player within the next 2 weeks. He has been absolutely spectacular for Detroit when his name's been called upon. Shooting 40% from the three-point line, 3.3 assists in 16 minutes per game. He's been hyper efficient. He also fits the mentality of this team. He is a very dogged player. He high energy, high effort. And again, when the numbers called upon, which for him has been, he goes from not playing to starting against the New Orleans Pelicans. Like, that is a real skill. And Danish Jenkins has it. A-. He's been spectacular.
Yeah, Danish Jenkins is an A- for me as well. Not 100% perfect. He's had a couple games where he turns the ball over too much. He's had a couple games where he doesn't shoot particularly well, and he's a little off. But here's the thing with him: it's like every time you're like, oh man, Danish Jenkins has had like a tough 5-minute stretch, he'll make a play. Like, he'll do something that shifts the entire narrative, and you go, well, you know what? He missed 3 straight shots, but then he just created a loose ball turnover and got an easy dunk for Asar Thompson. And now the momentum of this game has shifted once again. I think he has been absolutely tremendous. We were talking about it even in preseason, Aaron. We said, this guy kind of looks like an NBA rotation player.
Don't even. We were saying that at Summer League.
I mean, we were saying it. I know.
We were saying that at Summer League.
You were saying that at Summer League. I was saying interesting, and it was preseason for me. But yes, you were saying it at Summer League. So let's put an extra flower or two in that bouquet for you, Aaron. But yeah, I think for me, he has even given that, even us saying that, he's still exceeded our expectations on that front. I think the one thing you can maybe ding him for is, yeah, he's not the most consistent, but when he's been called upon, this guy has just been an absolute revelation. I don't see them being a 32-win team without Danis. I think they'd still be in the high 20s, but I think there's at least 3 games he's won for him this year.
Absolutely.
I mean, just look at the Washington Wizards one. I mean, that's not like the perfect encapsulation of this season for Danish Jenkins. Getting thrust into the starting lineup alongside Cade Cunningham, showing out for 24 points. And on the last play of the game, where it's not drawn up for him, where he's not even looking at the ball when it's out of bounds, he just catches, shoots, makes it, sends them to overtime. And he's doing it all while talking copious amounts of crap. That's who he is, man. He's a Piston. We love this guy. A-.
All right, last one, because Marcus Sasser's only played 12 games, and Chaz Lanier has seen limited action with the Detroit Pistons so far this year. So we'll wrap it up with, really the last player that's played meaningful amount of minutes for Detroit this year. What?
I do want to push back. We do have to talk about Javonte Green. I'm sorry.
Oh, my God. My bad.
We do need to talk about Javonte. I'm sorry. We got to talk Javonte.
Okay. My bad. But let's do Paul Reed real quick, and then we will end up wrap up with Javonte Green. It's like the timer in me in my mind. I see how long we've been recording. I'm like, wow, this is going to be a really long podcast. We've got to move here. But let's talk about Paul Reed. Because what a luxury he is for the Detroit Pistons as this team's third string center. He's been called upon at different points of this year to step into the rotation, to start. He's had some really big games when he has had his number called upon. He's been, you look at the per 100 possessions, you look at what his numbers are. He is an absolute gem to have that deep in Detroit's rotation. There are nights that he just does not play, and he is so clearly an NBA rotation player in this league. Paul Reed gets a very, 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 very solid B plus, only because I've already given out so many A's today. I will give him a B plus. He has been spectacular, and I always, it's never like good if the Pistons are without Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart, but knowing that like you're turning over to Paul Reed rather than James Wiseman, it's just, that is like the difference of, good teams. Like they have that kind of depth. They have those guys that they can turn to. And Paul Reed is Mr. Steady when it comes to that. They'll give you 110% effort. He'll make a few mistakes. He'll make a few plays where it's like, what the frick? How did he just do that? And that is the nightly Paul Reed experience. And I'm all about that.
He's no longer B-ball Paul. He's B-plus ball Paul. That's what he's getting from me as well. It is a B-plus Aaron. I think you're totally right. Another guy who just fits the culture, fits the mentality. He's like, unlike, previous Pistons per 100 gods, like Boban Marjanovic, for example, this dude can really contribute in a winning effort. You totally hit on it. He had that game against Chicago earlier on in the season, pressed into service. What does he do? He goes out there, he gives you 30 minutes, 28 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, and a block. That's Paul Reed for you, man. That's why you got to love him. Is he somebody necessarily that you want playing big minutes for you all the time? Perhaps not. I think his shtick wears a little thin if it's overexposed. But boy, for a break in case of emergency, third string center, is there a better one in the NBA than Paul Reed? I don't think so. I mean, how many teams is a third string center getting a B plus grade on for? And I don't think anyone's going to fight us on that.
No, nor should they. And hand up on Javonte Green. I guess I'm just holding a grudge to myself for not being a huge fan of the signing in the offseason.
And I'm not going to let you forget it.
But I am going to atone for my sin because Javonte Green is going to get my final A of the day. I mean, a vet min contract. He's giving you 7 points, 37% from the 3-point line. He's playing an undersized forward position at 6'4", and he's playing against other teams, power forwards, threes, whatever. And he's a cultural fit. He's an on-court fit. He's a guy that might play 25 minutes. He's a guy that might play 8 minutes, but whatever his minutes are, he's never going to hurt the team when he's on the court. He's had some absolutely major defensive plays for the Detroit Pistons, momentum swinging, game altering defensive plays so far this season. So for a guy that I was not a huge fan of when the Pistons signed him, I am very much here changing my tune because he has been everything you could want and way more than you could have possibly expected of him coming into this season.
Yeah, I have to give him an A as well. And I think when you look at like him, Danis Jenkins, Paul Reed, I think that's how it's got to stack up just in terms of like guys you didn't expect much from and what they've contributed to this team this year. Javonte Green, I mean, dude, he's played 812 minutes this year. I think all but, 2 of them have been great. The guy just doesn't. He's maybe made 2 plays this year that I haven't liked. He does everything you could ask of a role player for this team. He plays hellacious defense. Like I said, 2.6 steals per 36 minutes. The guy is a ball hawk. He is super athletic. He makes momentum shifting plays on both ends of the floor, both with his defense and with his ability to get to the rim and throw down these just big emotional dunks. Like how can you not get fired up watching Javonte Green play basketball? First guy off the bench to celebrate. One of those players where, again, I said when they brought him in, I liked Javonte Green a couple years ago with the Bulls. I think, maybe he could do a little something. I did not see him doing what he's done this year. This guy is quickly entering like Pistons 8th man Hall of Fame, like all-time status for me. This guy is just one of my favorite role players ever in this uniform, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. A for Javonte Green for me.
Yeah, he really, really has been spectacular. Jasper, that was it. That's That's the report card midseason review. Again, not really going to talk about Chaz Lanier and Marcus Sasser. They haven't played too many games or too many minutes overall with the Pistons so far this year. So, maybe if we look back at the end of the season, we'll have some more games for them to really dive into. But for the main guys that have played this year, the coach and the head executive, that is the report card. And that is our longest podcast in quite some time. I mean, before the report card, we hit on trade rumors. We hit on, JB Coach of the Year stuff. Like, we hit on a lot. And we gave you a very, very long podcast this week. So really glad that if you're still here, you're still hearing this, you're still watching this, you've stuck around this entire time. And so if you've done that, if you've given us over an hour of your time today, make sure that you've hit the follow button, you've hit the subscribe button, you've hit the like button, you've left a comment, a rating, all of that good stuff before you click off. Please go and do that. You've already supported us by watching or listening to the show today, but help us just a little bit more by taking one of those actions as well. That is going to do it for this week's edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast, brought to you by Believe and the FanDuel Sportsbook. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. We will see you all next time.